experience as a dedicated and hardworking public servant. He fought tirelessly to improve the health of our communities. He took up the fight against lead poisoning, advocated for more equitable education funding for our scholars, fair wages for workers, and equal rights for all New Yorkers. In 1989, he was one of the first leaders to question the efforts to accuse, charge, and later convict those who would come to be known as the Central Park Five, now known as the Exonerated Five. I had the honor of serving with Bill when we arrived in the council together last term. As his life and legacy are celebrated at his funeral today, my thoughts are with his family, his loved ones, and his beloved Harlem community that he loves so deeply. May he rest in peace. Yesterday marked the end of our executive budget hearings, and I truly want to thank all council members and staff for their hard work throughout this budget process thus far. A special thanks to Finance Chair Justin Brannan for his leadership. I'm surprised that he got up this morning. And to our great Finance Division for their commitment throughout these weeks of hearings. To members of the public who offered their testimony, we thank you so much for your engagement. This week, the Council unveiled our fiscal year 2024 executive budget, economic, and tax forecast. With the city's economy proving more resilient and driving stronger than expected tax collections, the Council now forecasts $1.8 billion more in revenues for fiscal years 2023 and 2024, and greater revenues in the out years that is projected by OMB in the executive budget. These economic forecasts show the city is well positioned to invest in essential services while preparing for future risks, even as the executive budget falls short of funding the critical services relied on by New Yorkers. While the administration continues to justify budget cuts as a result of the costs associated with supporting asylum seekers, the reality is that many investments missing from the budget would be solutions to the current challenges facing our city. The administration has said everything is on the table, yet it has disregarded solutions that can help New Yorkers avoid entering or transition out of the shelter system. Its response has relied on solely expanding emergency shelters, which are inherently expensive without focusing enough on alleviating pressure on our shelter system. Yet we know there are many other solutions to our challenges that are achievable through the city budget. For example, the executive budget maintained a budget cut of over $30 million to NYCHA's Vacant Unit Readiness Program, which has seen the amount of time it takes to repair vacant units reach approximately 9 months. NYCHA's data shows that due to these delays, the number of vacant apartments grew from 490 to 6,583 vacant units over the last 16 months. Now is not the time to institute these cuts. Instead, we should empower the program to rehabilitate vacant apartments under the city's control. We also must invest in adequate resources into the Affordable Housing Capital Budget, City FEPS housing vouchers, and supportive housing. We cannot underfund and understaff the very agencies that connect New Yorkers with the essential services they need: the health, safety, and well-being of our city, communities, and economy are all bound to how well the budget invests in essential services. I'd like to extend my congratulations at this time to the union resident physicians at Elmhurst Hospital, where I was born. They did come to a tentative, you too? They came to a tentative agreement with Mount Sinai for pay parity. These frontline healthcare workers put their lives on the line to steer us through the most difficult days of the pandemic, and I'm so pleased to hear that they will finally receive fair pay for their work. And now we're going to move on to our stated agenda. First, we'll vote on the following appointments to the Taxi and Limousine Commission, or TLC. Kenneth Y.K. Chan, Paul Bader, Thomas Sorrentino, and Sarah Kaufman. Next, we'll vote on the following finance item. A revenue budget modification which recognizes $2.25 billion of new revenues in fiscal year 2023 and a $400 million reduction in prior year payable liabilities. Next, we'll vote on the following land use items. 141-05 109th Avenue rezoning will facilitate a new 4-story mixed-use building with approximately 56 housing units, 14 of which will be permanently affordable in my district. The council is modifying the application to strike MIH option 2 and add the deep affordability option. 26-50 Brooklyn Queens Expressway West rezoning will facilitate the expansion of BQE Fitness to increase its square footage and approximately 111 accessory off-street parking spaces in Councilmember Caban's district. 61-10 Queens Boulevard rezoning will facilitate the expansion of Planet Fitness to increase its square footage within the existing building in Councilmember Wan's district. Paperific rezoning will facilitate the development of a 5-story commercial building, 63 parking spaces, and 35 bicycle parking spaces. The council is modifying the application to strike MIH option 2 and add the deep affordability option in Councilmember Hanif's district. And 784 Cortlandt Avenue project revision, an amendment to Council Resolution 1014 from 2019 related to the Melrose Commons Urban Renewal Plan, which will facilitate a 7-story mixed-use building with approximately 23 affordable housing units and community facility space in Councilmember Salamanca's district. Lastly, we will vote on the following pieces of legislation. We'll vote on 15 pre-considered state legislative resolution, including Sammy's Law, a bill authorizing New York City to establish its own speed limits. And I want to thank Councilmember Jennifer Gutierrez and our Transportation and Infrastructure Chair, Selvina Brooks Powers, for their leadership on this measure. Resolution 550, sponsored by Councilmember Shahana Hanif, would recognize May as Lupus Awareness Month in the city of New York. Introduction 566A, sponsored by Councilmember Oswald Feliz, would amend the administrative code to ensure all students with disabilities would be transported on buses with air conditioning. Introduction 590A, sponsored by Council members Carlina Rivera and Chio Say, would make the Open Culture Program, which was established temporarily during the COVID-19 pandemic and allowed eligible arts and culture institutions to obtain permits for outdoor events, permanent. The city would be required to establish the program by August 1st, 2023, and the city would also be required to submit an annual report evaluating the program. And I now invite Councilmember Rivera to come forward, tell us about Benito, and speak on this legislation.
She just snuck that.
How much time do you have? So many milestones at 3 months. All right, well, hi everyone, good afternoon. Very, very pleased to be here. It's a really big day for the council. I'm really proud to be a part of this body, to stand up for New Yorkers, long-term and new. I'm going to talk a little bit about my bill, but I just wanted to congratulate my colleagues for all of their work, and especially for treating housing as a human right. All right, so I just want to thank you, Madam Speaker, and of course to Chi Ose for your support and leadership. I'm Councilmember Carlina Rivera, representative for the vibrant and very creative communities of the East Side. So arts and culture is what we're known for. We have pioneering organizations that include places like Anthropology Film Archives and the New Eurekan Poets Cafe and La Mama. And this Sunday, you'll actually be able to see arts and cultures right in the street at the 36th annual Loisaida Festival on Avenue C. So this Sunday from 11:30 to 5, please step into District 2 and have yourself a good time. It's also a really great example of what this bill aims to do. I'm really grateful to have grown up on the Lower East Side. These are diverse communities that have come together. Their history is really to demand social change. And arts and activism has always been linked up and really, really important. And it's always been aided by the creative spirit in terms of what we get done as a city. I just want to thank Speaker Adams for inviting me here, because reviving and making permanent the Open Culture Program is so critical to the survival of so many organizations across the city. It was a lifeline during the pandemic. It clearly brought that component of healing and creativity and just a reflection of our identity as a city right into the streets, I think, when we needed it the most. And it allowed neighbors, families, and friends to come together in a safe way, and it made our communities more enjoyable and lively with all the things that were going on. The Open Culture Program will provide an affordable way for eligible arts and culture institutions to obtain permits to use roadways for events. The permit will have a nominal $25 application fee, so accessibility is key here in terms of affordability, and will otherwise be free, helping expand equity and access to the arts. And it provides a low barrier way for performances and creation outside of buildings and into communities. So COVID-19 really hit these arts and culture organizations hard, and especially for those, we all love Broadway, but you come to East 4th Street in the Lower East Side and you see what's going on there in terms of those smaller pioneering organizations. You see the public New York Theater Workshop. It's just an incredible place. And that's why people come to New York City. People come to New York City for the arts. They come to our neighborhoods, our restaurants, our small businesses, but really they come here because they're allowed to not just enjoy themselves, but live this very authentic life and express themselves. And we have to ensure that we really maintain that culture. This will go hand in hand with Open Streets, which we have to ensure stays to be the robust program that we have imagined it to be. And I know visitors, they seek solace and enjoyment in performances that makes this city and our neighborhood so much more wonderful. So I'm excited to pass this bill today. I want to thank all of my colleagues for their support, especially I want to just shout out former council member Jimmy Van Bramer for his work on this bill last session. And again, Madam Speaker, thank you. We all need a little joy in our lives when things get pretty serious and harrowing, and I'm excited that this will be a part of that initiative and that movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rivera. Introduction 686A, sponsored by Councilmember Althea Stevens, would require the Department of Youth and Community Development, or DYCD, to operate a Summer Youth Employment Program, or SYEP, and coordinate with other agencies to develop a summer youth employment opportunity. DYCD would also coordinate with the Department of Small Business Services, or SBS, to promote SYEP to businesses that work with SBS. This bill will help diversify options for SYEP participants by increasing collaboration with government agencies, community-based organizations, and local private businesses. I invite Councilmember Stevens to come forward and speak on her bill.
Little technology issues going on here. You're gonna give me a flash drive? Yeah. I really am having to. Okay, here it goes. Look at that technology. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for having me here today. It's a pleasure for me to be passing Intro 686, which will require the Department of Youth and Community Development to operate a summer youth employment program. DYCD will coordinate with other city agencies to develop a summer youth employment opportunity where each agency would have the goal of accepting at least 0.5% of its total full-time headcount to SYP participating in SYP for that year. New York City is currently faced with the worst workforce crisis of its time, and it's our job to develop solutions that will foster a thriving workforce and expose our young people to the things that they need to see. SYP provides experiences for young people to gain real-world work experience and develop important skills such as communication, time management, problem solving, and so much more. The skills they require are vital for the future of a successful workforce and overall well-being. Addressing this in our citywide partnership and our crucial steps and milestones towards reimagining our city's workforce. Our collective efforts are maximize the resources and dispose of the exposure that gives SYP participants access to a larger range of employment opportunities, ensuring that the program caters to the different needs and passions of young people while promoting workforce development in the entire city. Additionally, offering more positions around the city. This will help our agencies act as a crucial pipeline to address the employment challenges experienced by our city agencies currently. So thank you, and I'm very excited about this bill.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Stevens. Next, we will vote on the following bills sponsored by our Technology Committee Chair, Councilmember Jennifer Gutierrez. Originally proposed in my 2022 State of the City, I'm so proud to see these bills move forward, especially during Older Americans Month. Introduction 664A would require the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, or DCAS, to create a process for the city to donate extra computers and related tech equipment to educational and nonprofit organizations who teach, train, or help New Yorkers. Eligible organizations would include schools, libraries, and other public or private educational institutions and organizations serving people with disabilities, seniors, and low-income New Yorkers. Additionally, this bill would require an annual report on the equipment donations. Introduction 665A would require the Department for the Aging, or DFTA, and the Office of Technology and Innovation, OTI, to design and implement a digital literacy program for older adults. The program would teach older adults how to navigate online learning platforms and social media, how to access telehealth services, how to apply for benefits online, and how to identify online fraud or scams. Additionally, the bill would require a report to the council when any changes or updates to the program are made, and I invite Chair Gutierrez to come forward and speak on her bills.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for your leadership and for allowing me to partner on this. And I really just love that there is complete follow-through. She did mention it in her State of the City last year, and months later we got to work on this bill. So I just wanted to uplift you because you got to walk the walk. I'm honored to have worked with Speaker Adams on the two technology bills that we're passing today that were included in the State of the City. Access to technology played a pivotal role during the pandemic, and whether it was ensuring that people could receive vital social services or enabling families to stay connected, it is not enough to simply hook someone up to the internet and consider our work done. True access means providing people with the necessary devices and empowering them with digital literacy to safely harness the full potential of the internet. It is also our role in government to ensure that people have access to these devices, whether it's in our schools, whether it's in libraries, whether it's at nonprofits that are doing the work that we so heavily depend on. So I'm really honored that we're able to pass these bills and really call attention to the importance of the future of technology, accessibility, and making sure that it is available for every single New Yorker. Thank you.
Thank you. Great work. Thank you. Finally, we will vote on a critical package of bills that help New Yorkers avoid or move out of the city's shelter system by reforming our rental assistance voucher program, CityFEPS. Our city is facing an unprecedented number of people experiencing homelessness, including over 80,000 people in our shelter system, of which over 50,000 are longtime New Yorkers. According to the mayor's management report, single adults and families with children stay in shelter for over a year, and adult families over 2 years. With the rise in asylum seekers, shelter space has become scarce, resulting in the city placing people in emergency shelters that are far more expensive and in places that often do not meet basic living standards. Though the impact of caring for people seeking asylum has been considerable, we cannot blame them for our city's issues. There was a homeless crisis in New York City before the arrival of people seeking asylum. The administration has not focused enough on solutions to move New Yorkers out of shelters and into permanent housing. CityFEPS vouchers can be a powerful tool to help us, but the city's arcane policies in administering them are counterproductive. Why deny access to a housing voucher that can help secure permanent housing? This is a solution to help reduce homelessness, stabilize communities, free up space for asylum seekers and others, all while saving money on costly emergency shelters that skew far more expensive than traditional shelter models while offering fewer services. An analysis by Wynn Housing. A family in an emergency hotel shelter for 1 year costs $139,795. This one-year cost is more expensive than housing a family for 5 years in a 2-bedroom apartment with a City FEPS voucher. The choice is clear from the perspective of what helps New Yorkers in our communities and what is cost-effective. These are the types of solutions our city must pursue. Today's legislation will not only help New Yorkers move out of shelters, but also prevent the evictions of New Yorkers most at risk of homelessness and entering our shelter system. The costs of shelter go beyond the price of beds and buildings. We must also account for the costs of health, mental health, education, and other services for our affected neighbors. These bills are critical to the success of our city. To maximize the impact of these policies, we must also address the source of income discrimination that blocks New Yorkers' access to housing. This requires the unit at the Commission of Human Rights to be fully staffed and to ensure that landlords are held accountable for refusing vouchers. Finally, we must increase housing supply throughout the city because housing is key to stability and the solution to homelessness. Before I call upon the bill sponsors, I want to say how incredibly proud I am of all the work by our council members who've led the efforts on this legislation and the staff that worked on them so diligently. Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala is the body's leading voice on issues related to homelessness and general welfare. She knows personally the city's shelter system from her own experiences and carries such clarity on the challenges and issues facing New Yorkers with these experiences. Her selfless leadership for unhoused New Yorkers and our obligation as a city to them is unrivaled, and she is always someone that I lean on. I'm also so proud of the leadership of our Housing and Buildings Chair, Pirina Sanchez. She's shown so much leadership on these bills and more broadly on the issues of affordable housing. Her laser focus on issues of affordability in our housing efforts keeps attention where it needs to be, on New Yorkers facing the greatest challenges, and I thank her. And Councilmember Tiffany Caban's incisive legislating led to a bill targeting an issue that leads vouchers to be devalued and more difficult to use. These bills represent what a legislature can do to solve pressing issues and all too common problems with government policies that tend to undermine services for low-income people in our city, and I thank her. I also want to thank all of the organizations who've been fighting for these solutions and specifically for these bills in coalition. Care for the Homeless, Citizens Committee for Children, Community Service Society, Homeless Services United, the Homes Can't Wait campaign, Legal Aid Society, Make the Road New York, Neighbors Together, New Destiny Housing, Open Hearts Initiative, Urban Justice Center, Urban Pathways, Vocal New York, and WIN, along with its leader and one of my predecessors, former Speaker Christine Quinn. You can clap for Christine Quinn.
Don't be shy.
These advocates and homeless service providers, as well as their clients and members, have brought the voices of New Yorkers directly affected by homelessness and housing instability into the legislative process where it needs to be. They have been vital partners to this council and this city, and their commitment to lifting up our neighbors who need government to act on their behalf has been invaluable. And now on to the bills. Introduction 893A, sponsored by Councilmember Pirina Sanchez, would help ensure residents that are housed but face eviction who do not currently qualify eligibility for City FEPS rental assistance vouchers. Specifically, the bill would disallow DSS from using the preservation of a rent-controlled apartment, receipt of adult protective services, or a community guardianship, and lack of previous shelter residence as criteria to deny eligibility for City FEPS. The bill would also provide households with the opportunity to demonstrate risk of eviction with a rent demand letter as a means to meet the eligibility for City FEPS. This bill would take effect 180 days after it becomes law. Introduction 894A, also sponsored by Councilmember Sanchez, would remove the current requirement that an individual or family demonstrate that they are employed to become eligible for a City FEPS rental assistance voucher. The bill would also change the maximum total gross eligibility income for a City FEPS voucher from 200% of the federal poverty level to 50% of the area median income to better align with economic need in our city. The bill would take effect 180 days after it becomes law, and I gratefully invite Councilmember Sanchez to come forward and speak about her bills.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker and our Deputy Speaker. This is a particularly proud day, I think, for our council, because our Speaker is having all of us stand in the power that we have as the first municipality led by all women and a majority of people of color. We're standing in that mission and in that requirement that we have from our communities. We have reached a critical juncture in our city's housing and homelessness crisis, with record levels of individuals and families affected. In my district, we know the heartbreaking consequences firsthand. In Bronx Community Board 5, Community District 5, 1 in 10 households faced an eviction last year. This means children who are forced to commute sometimes 90 minutes, 2 hours, from their shelter that might be in Queens to their school that might be on Tremont Avenue. This means social bonds and support networks that are severed, families without their own support systems. The resulting stress at the household and community level permeates to our communities, mine only as an example, manifesting in food insecurity, poor health outcomes, and even violence. And if these pre-existing realities were not enough, we're also welcoming new New Yorkers. And there's even more pressure to improve the efficiency of our existing systems and provide relief. We cannot allow these realities to continue, and that's why I'm proud to sponsor these 2 bills today that are going to serve to stabilize our communities and make our shelters more efficient. Let's be clear. Increasing access to permanent housing is not only the morally correct thing to do, stabilizing our families, but it is also the fiscally prudent course of action in confronting a housing and homelessness crisis. Per the mayor's own housing blueprint, it costs the city about $8,700 per month to house a family of 2 in the shelter system in 2022. A City FEPS voucher for a 1-bedroom apartment for the same exact family would cost $2,300, and potentially much less, resulting in annual total expenses that are significantly lower than what the city is currently paying, not to mention the social impacts that the Speaker has talked about. So 893 would remove requirements for a previous homeless history, and 894 would ease work and income requirements for shelter residents, making vouchers more accessible. Together, this bill package will relieve program requirements that essentially required homelessness as a precondition. And I just want to thank the Speaker again, and the Deputy Speaker, and all of my colleagues, and all of the advocates for getting us here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Next, Introduction 229A, sponsored by Councilmember Tiffany Caban, would prohibit DSS from deducting a utility allowance from the maximum amount of a City FEPS voucher. This bill would also provide that if a tenant's public assistance shelter allowance is reduced by renting an apartment that is less than the maximum monthly rent, DSS will issue a check to the tenant in the amount of that reduction. I invite Councilmember Caban to come forward and speak about her legislation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First, I just want to extend gratitude and congratulations to all of my colleagues. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Deputy Speaker, Councilmember Sanchez. This is an incredibly proud moment, I think, for all of us. But I said this before, and I'll say it again. This is what it looks like to legislate and operate from a framework, from the belief, from the imperative that housing is a human right, and not just any housing. As was spoken about before, the social ills and impacts of being in the congregate shelter system. But we are saying right now that housing as a human right means dignified, safe, long-term, healthy, clean housing, period. And these bills are going to go a long way to do that. I just want to take a couple more moments to thank all of the advocates who made that happen. My legislative director, Madhuri Shukla, who was just relentless on this. And again, the partnership with the speaker and the rest of my colleagues. But 229 is really, really simple. It prohibits DSS from deducting that utility allowance from the maximum rent, in addition to being a really simple idea and rule change. It's also not new. It's not novel. It's what we already do in the Section 8 Housing Assistance Program. It's what we do in other places. It's common sense, but the impact cannot be overstated. It is going to make a real difference in people's lives. And so I just want to frame what has been problematic about the utility cost rule. In its current form, it has prolonged the search for housing. It's made it harder for individuals and families to find housing by reducing the amount of rental support. It's pretty simple. It's also economically destabilizing and inefficient. The utility cost rule puts the burden of paying for utilities on vulnerable and housing insecure individuals and families. And also, it adds needless complexity to the process. Even as we stand here in this room as folks who I would venture to guess are really privileged and have safe, secure housing to go home to every day, God, is it hellish trying to find those apartments? And can you imagine for other folks who are struggling with a host of different issues? So, families who are seeking housing using a City FEPS voucher, they're already strained, either by living in the shelter system or by juggling multiple competing priorities, including work and apartment hunting, school and childcare, negotiating the big administrative machinery. So this is going to go a really long way for so many different families. And I'm really, really proud to be a part of this body, especially today. And I'm looking forward to the passage of the entire package. And again, congratulations to my colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Council Member. And finally, Introduction 878A, sponsored by our own Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, would prohibit DSS from requiring an individual or family to reside in shelter 90 days before becoming eligible for a City FEPS rental assistance voucher. Removing a shelter stay as a precondition to voucher assistance streamlines access to vouchers for those in the shelter system who would otherwise be eligible and works to prevent individuals from entering the shelter system in the first place. This would reduce the number of people in the shelter system and lengths of stay and costs of being in the shelter while improving child and family well-being. I invite my anchor, Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, to come forward and speak on her bills.
Why is she so cute? I want to be cute. It is sweet, and I think that is really indicative of the relationship that we have here at the, in this council, and that the relationships that we form really just help and reinforce, right, the work that we do. It's been a really interesting week. First, it was the guinea pigs a couple of weeks ago, and now here we are again. I find myself in controversy yet again. I mean, the two of the simplest bills that I just assumed, were common sense and that, we would be okay with, turned out to be some of the most dramatic. But I'm really proud of this bill, and not only this bill, but this whole entire package, because I think we were at I want to give a little of context. I was facilitating a hearing a couple of months ago on the City FEPS program, and I just was not happy with the responses that I was getting from the administration. And this, coupled with many, years of conversations with the advocates who do a fantastic job of really, not only evaluating, but doing their research and in helping to inform our policy work here. I was really just frustrated, and I was sitting there and I'm like, it feels nonsensical that we can't come up with a comprehensive solution to this problem, right? To bringing down the census at the city, shelters. And so I sat there and I jotted down a list of what I would do, right? And so I started from the perspective of an individual that was still housed, that would qualify for City FEPS if they were in a shelter. Pierina beat me to it. But the idea is, right, like what are the strategies that we're using with existing resources that we have now that are already funded to keep those families in place? There's no need for someone to have to transition into shelter to get a voucher, only to get a voucher so that then they can go out and look for another apartment. It's common sense, right? And it's the most dignified way of really addressing, some of the things that we're seeing on the ground. And the 90-day rule, and I want to credit Chris Quinn, who has been, a champion on this issue for a really long time. It's just so simple. I mean, why would you want to pay for 90 extra days for a person to stay in shelter when it's so expensive? Why not, if we know that we're overpopulated and that our shelter system is so stressed, why are we not doing everything that we can to help facilitate the move out of those New Yorkers that live here, that are from here, that qualify, so that then we can more properly address the issue of the asylum-seeking families that are going to need a little bit of more longer-term care. You would think that would be very simple to not only explain but to accept, and the rhetoric that we've heard in the last few days has been really heartbreaking and infuriating, because it boils down to poverty shaming. And I've heard, anything from, people are gonna make themselves, they're gonna in arrear, they're gonna not pay their rent and become in arrear so that then they can qualify for this. In order to qualify for a city FEPS voucher, you need to be in poverty. Who in their right mind wants to live that way if they have another option? Ask yourselves that. I grew up in poverty. I understand it. Many of us have, right? But you shouldn't have to have lived in poverty to have a heart and to understand how difficult it is for a family to be stuck in this system for years on end. Years. Because we have eliminated every freaking option that we have to allow a faster process of move-outs in the shelter system. They no longer qualify for Section 8. We no longer have NYCHA priority. Now we're limiting City FEPS vouchers. We are not going after landlords that are illegally keeping folks from apartments. We're warehousing. This city is known for warehousing residential buildings and allowing those private landlords to get away with that. So I want the same level of enthusiasm in addressing that than we're getting for, when we're making the argument that we have to keep wealthier New Yorkers in this city. Because it's bull crap. And want to really just say thank you to my partners in government, because this has not been easy. We have been targeted, harassed, called, emailed, and we're voting this out of, today out of committee because it's the right thing to do. And I hope that it sends a message that, this body's not playing, that we're not playing, that we're going to continue to push the envelope, and that we will not be deterred or intimidated. So thank you.
Well, she had a speech.
Thanks, Melly.
Diana, I think you better stay here. This is about to be the Diana show. So that concludes our stated agenda. We're going to go ahead and take on topic questions.
Just to confirm on the voucher bills, do you all have a veto-proof majority for all of them? Have you been given any indication by the mayor that he will be vetoing these bills? He's obviously put out a statement saying that they don't support them. In addition, that statement says that he offered, or the administration offered, a standalone bill that would remove the 90-day rule and perhaps, I guess, toss out the rest of the proposals that you all have. And you did not want that.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. It's good to see you. We're going to pass the legislation today, the entire package. We have no doubt about that. We are confident in our support, and it would really be unfortunate if the mayor chose to veto the bills that help New Yorkers leave the shelter system. We'll cross that bridge, if and when we get there, but today we will pass this package of legislation gratefully. As far as, taking one bill out for another, that's something that would not be debatable when it comes to this entire package that we need to happen for New Yorkers that need us to do this.
Madam Speaker, I was speaking with a social worker out there at one of the big rallies that helps people apply for these vouchers and talks about how backlogged the whole system is right now and did give some credence to some of the mayor's concerns about cost and administrative burden. He says, I have trouble getting people through now. How are you going to get more people through? What do you have to say to that social worker who means well and has some of the mayor's concerns?
Well, when we take a look at, once again, who is actually who the applicable folks are for the vouchers and everything else, we are looking at low-income individuals. All right. So this would affect residents with incomes under 50% of AMI would not be affected by this. Moneyed New Yorkers are not going to be affected by this. I think the Deputy Speaker just said it best, and she can add on to this, is that I don't think that any of us in this room would want to be a part of the number who are involved in the homeless, houseless number here. And Diana, if you want to expand on that a little bit,
I think that one of the issues that we were seeing, and that is a legitimate concern, right, is the processing of existing vouchers to people that are still stuck in shelter today. And that is an administrative, problem. That is their problem to solve. They have not hired the necessary people that they need to adequately staff these agencies. So not only are we not paying vouchers on time, we're not processing vouchers on time, and that's already on top of what we're not doing with people that are on SNAP that haven't received their benefits in quite some time. And the most depressing part of this is that I've literally found this out. Some of it I find out through Nolan, who's my number one source these days. And who knew? I love Nolan, but and I've said this at hearings, like the lack of sense of urgency is astounding. If we know that we are in crisis, these are safety net programs. We don't have the luxury of waiting a year. We don't have that luxury. These are families that are hungry, that are unhoused, that are living in rat and, sometimes, roach-infested apartments that we're able to get them. It's nonsensical. So that is his problem to solve. The administration has to figure out. We need to staff up. We have been very, I think, helpful. We've participated in helping to host hiring forums. We've been able to get folks, onboarded, and we'll continue to do that because we want to do our part as well. We're not saying, you do all of the work. We're saying we are willing, equal partners. Treat us that way.
That's right.
To put a finer point on Courtney's question, do you expect this to pass with a veto-proof majority?
We will pass this legislation today. We will pass this legislation today.
I'd like to get you guys to respond to the statement the city put out from the DSS commissioner that says that the bills will undermine systems designed to direct resources to those with greatest need, disadvantaging the nearly 20,000 people who already have vouchers and can't find housing with them, that they cost the city some $17 billion on top of what's already budgeted, and would do, quote, significant harm, end quote, to the most vulnerable New Yorkers.
Thank you, Nolan. The administration's number is exaggerated, and it's incorrectly based on the city paying the entire cost of an apartment for a voucher holder, which is not how the program works at all. They know that better than we do, I think. Voucher holders pay 30% of their gross income towards their rent. That's not going to stop. They will still pay into their rent. The council's fiscal impact statement, which leans conservative, is $10 billion over 5 years, with only $36 million in costs in the coming fiscal year and less than $400 million in the following year. Yet we know uninterrupted growth in homelessness would cost the city a whole lot more. So, you know, our fiscal impact notes this, but it just can't compute this. The numbers are clear that an individual or family living in a homeless shelter costs the city much more than providing them a voucher that pays for part of their rent in an apartment. And that's even more expensive if it's an emergency shelter like those that we see happening on a very frequent basis now, like those being relied on now because of the homelessness crisis. So shockingly, housing a family, as was said by my colleagues, in an emergency hotel shelter for 1 year at nearly $140,000 costs more than housing that family in a 2-bedroom apartment for 5 years. 5 years with a City FEPS voucher with a voucher at a little over $131,000. So we've got a lot, you know, to think about, you know, statements like that. The fiscal impact statement also doesn't include savings that would be realized in spending on emergency shelters if we create additional capacity in our standard shelter system by moving people out, which is what this package of bills intends to do, so that we really wouldn't need emergency shelters at the extent that we're relying on them today. We are solely relying on emergency shelters right now. It also doesn't account for the potential costs and health impacts on individuals and families in the shelter system. That's something that our Deputy Speaker just alluded to, and Councilmember Caban as well. What does all of this do to one's mental health, their well-being, their education? All of that could be averted through the prevention and reduction of stays in shelter, or the potential social and economic benefits from an increase in individuals and families who are stably housed, which is what this package looks to do.
If I could ask one more question, sort of a bigger question, if you will. It takes months for someone even without an actual furnished apartment in the city. What will the actual, you know, how many people will actually be helped by that? Because it's simply enough apartments to go
Yep.
around, period.
Yeah. We have apartments, and we've created creative ways of looking at that also through NYCHA and other means, by the way, which we have not really discussed fully yet. It is no secret, and we are not going to run away from the fact that housing is an issue in the city of New York. It has been. Once again, much like keeping residents in shelters practically for naught, by not moving bureaucracy out of the way. Housing stock in New York City has been impeded because we have not been putting our efforts into communities that have not borne the weight of other communities, which is what my fair housing framework intends to do. That's how we tend to look at this with a holistic approach. Every district has to be responsible for housing in their district. So I've been unwavering about the need for a city to develop more housing with a focus on deeply affordable housing. So we have to focus on housing production, no doubt.
Speaker, I think you've said many times over the past few months that moving people into permanent housing is less expensive than emergency shelters and regular homeless shelters. Why do you think the administration is so resistant to this idea? I mean, they're supportive of the 90-day rule, but the other bills in the package.
Well, the administration, you know, have their reasons for doing things the way they do. I would also pose the question, and I don't have an answer for why the administration acts and reacts the way that they do, but we also continue to invite collaboration, total collaboration, you know, to help in these decisions, because this is probably the most difficult situation that this city has been in a very, very long time. We are looking to be partners and collaborate on these decisions rather than being given decisions and then saying, give us some more suggestions on how you feel we should move forward. So, so that is what we have to deal with also. We've got to, you know, continue to move forward, you know, regardless of, you know, what the administration does, how they work, how they don't work. This council has a specific job to do. That is to be the check and the balance on the administration. That is to do the work of the city of the people of New York. And again, this particular situation has been bottlenecked for far too long, and we have got to move these bills.
Speaker, I apologize if you said this already, but how many people will now be eligible under this housing voucher program, will now be eligible for this program with you guys expanding the eligibility? And then one more question for you. You know, with this topic, with the right to shelter law, you and the Adams administration seem pretty far apart. How would you say your working relationship is with the mayor right now?
Well, our working relationship is interesting right now. And I'm going to leave it at the word interesting because we've got a lot of work to do to get through the budget. The mayor and I are still, we're still very intent on doing what's best for the people of the city of New York. We have different ways of getting there, but we're going to continue to work together to do what we have to do for the people. As far as a number, Diana, do we have a number? I don't remember seeing a specific number, but we can get back to you with that, Morgan. Thank you. Our youth. We welcome our Fostering Youth Success students who are here joining us today, and we do have a question from our youth.
Hello, my name is Fantice McFadden.
Hi.
I was just wondering if any of these housing vouchers would apply to kids in foster care or ACS systems that are coming of age and looking for housing, or would they have to go through another sort of way to get housing?
You have asked such a great question, and we thank you for that. The short answer is yes, and I don't know if any of my colleagues want to expand. Althea, would you like to come up and speak to your youth? Directly.
Yeah, and I think part of it, and even thinking about these packages, the thought behind it was how do we make sure we address it? Because one of the issues we've been having, especially in our DYCD shelters, is the 90-day rule where they would be in a shelter after they've aged out of foster care and then would have to go into an adult shelter for 90 days before they would be eligible. And so this would actually eliminate that. And so it really is about supporting young people like you and young people across the city who do need to make sure that they have housing when they become of age.
Oh, well, follow up. I believe you're going to be our last question, so let's go for it.
I'm sorry, but
Don't be sorry.
so in the case that children also may not understand how exactly to pursue the voucher, which would potentially make the voucher useless and just using it for no reason, like this gentleman said, is there a way for children to learn about things such as credit and where to find housing and how to go about continuing housing in order for no mistakes to happen in the future or for them not to be for them not to be in shelters in the future?
Yes, we actually just passed
Yes.
the bill.
Councilmember?
Sorry. Yes. So in my committee on youth services, we have been working on a bill sponsored by Farrah Lewis that also helps and accompany young people who are in the system. And there's a lot of organizations out there like Ali Forney that does a lot of this work, Safe Horizon, that have mandatory financial literacy that can help young people really learn the steps of financial literacy. I'm also pushing for us to have financial literacy in our schools because that was something else that came out in the hearing that a lot of young people said that they would want to have. So yes, it would. And we are addressing that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to have to get into stated, but we'll take off topic, a couple or one very quickly. We have to go to work.
The city controller, Brad Lander, suggested that state lawmakers should okay tax rises in the city as one way to provide more revenue. Do you think taxes should be going up?
Oh, boy. I'm going to have to talk to the comptroller about some of his suggestions. At this time, I do not necessarily agree with that, but we would have to take a look at the total picture. I mean, taxes for whom would be my question.
For the MTA last week put out a fair meeting report, and one of their suggestions was they want to simplify the student MetroCard program and expand the student MetroCard program, which would take more money from the city. Is that something you guys are open to?
We would certainly want to listen to it. We would want to listen to suggestions like that. Yes. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Speaker.
I don't know why Marietta always wants to take it with her short arm.